Broadcasting from the Washington Hilton in Washington, D.C., Solutions Review is on location at Boomi World 2019. Brought to you by Dell Boomi.
It's Doug Atkinson here in the middle of the Boomi World 2019 Expo Hall. And I'm lucky enough to be joined by a customer of Boomi's, and we always love to talk to customers. That's Michael Lederman, VP of IT at the leading hotels of the world.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
A great brand.
Thank you.
And you have a great story and it's a story that I think a lot of folks will be able to relate to, and that is a story of technology that was purchased, that you inherited, that wasn't necessarily being leveraged, Boomi, and then some decisions that you had to make around what you were going to do with it and how you might even actually be able to use what you had at that moment to take care of some internal customers.
Absolutely. So I joined Leading Hotels of the World a little bit around 2.5 years ago and entered an organization that had been heavily underinvested in technology. A lot of old legacy platforms that were disconnected, no clear concept of who their customers really were from a data perspective, and no way to really understand the breadth of our business because of all this disparate data. When I came in, we had already purchased Boomi. It was envisioned for a relatively small project around a data warehouse and implementing Tableau and some analytics. But when we looked at where we were as a business and the evolving landscape of hospitality technology, what guests are expecting from hotel companies such as ourselves and hotels such as our member hotels, there was a huge gap between what we were capable of doing with these old technologies and what our customers and our hotels were expecting. I was fortunate in that we had made this investment in Boomi, even though we hadn't made any use of it yet. But we had some of the pieces at least already purchased so that we were able to put together a plan on how do we literally rip out our entire technology infrastructure and rebuild our entire foundation from the ground up. Implementing everything in the cloud, leveraging Salesforce, Sabre's Synexus CR, a new loyalty engine, and then all of this kind of held together by Dell Boomi and AWS.
A pretty ambitious plan.
It was.
And you were able to pull it off because you're speaking here as a marquee customer. Tell me a little bit about how you went about it.
It was actually one of those initiatives that happened in phases, but not by intent, but by necessity.
Yeah, sure.
So we started off with this data and analytics initiative. And then the next major project that was described to me was our intent to launch a new loyalty program.
Nice.
We had a loyalty program called Leaders Club.
Yep.
It's still called Leaders Club, but if anyone watching this is a member, you'll know that roughly about a year ago, we completely overhauled the program. That was actually the first deliverable of this new transformation. Our intent was to recreate this loyalty program to make it more valuable to the customers that were really the best match for our program, and to disincentivize the customers that were not a good match for our program and maybe were taking advantage of LHW in our hotels. So in order to launch that, we realized that none of the underpinning customer relationship management platform could handle the new loyalty platform. So it started as a data product, then it slowly became a CRM and a loyalty platform. Then when we realized once we did that, we also needed to implement Marketing Cloud and redesign all of our marketing communications. And we blinked an eye 3 to 4 months into what was supposed to be a small project, and we realized we just have to do it all. We have to transform our entire infrastructure.
That's great.
Yeah.
And so you obviously are doing this in concert with demands that are coming up through internally from effectively your customers, right? The folks that are knocking
Absolutely.
on your door and saying, "Michael, we gotta revise this loyalty program. We gotta start.
We want to
tap
understand our
CRM
customers better.
Yeah, right.
We need to be able to provide our hotels with better insights in how do they provide the best possible experiences for our customers.
And so do you leverage the Boomi folks in that process as you're trying to sort out how to connect all that together? Do you have a partner that was helping?
We did have a partner. We used Slalom Consulting.
Yep.
They were in the door from the beginning when it was a small project, and every time that we realized we need to expand the scope of the project, we actually went through a pretty good governance project and process, and we kept doing RFPs, and Slalom kept winning, and we kept giving them bigger and bigger pieces of this project, and they ended up seeing us through not just the launch of this entire platform, which was roughly a year ago, but the next major milestone after that was we then had to change out our entire central reservation system. When we launched the initial platform, we were on Trust, which was our central reservation system for years. The original plan had been to transition to Sabre's Synexus platform prior to all of this going live, but because of some delays on their side, due to Sabre actually acquired Trust, and it slowed the entire process down. They weren't ready for us in time for us to do our transformation, so we had to do ours without them. But that meant that we went live in September of last year, and then immediately started ripping and replacing our central reservation connectivity to then switch over to a new central res system in June.
So how do you go about preparing your external customers, the hotels themselves? How do you prepare, or I guess prepare for any kind of that kind of change?
That's a great question. So definitely a lot of education.
Yeah.
This was really a company-wide initiative. This was not a technology initiative. The technology component that my teams ran was foundational to making all of this successful, but the loyalty program, the central reservation system, these were really, they were driven from the CEO down.
Yeah.
So we had an amazing marketing team that was working hand in hand with all of our hotels, explaining the new loyalty program, training them in the rules of the program, how to use the technology that my team and Slalom were putting together. When we went through the central reservation project, we had an amazing distribution support team. Those are the staff in LHW that work with our hotels to make sure that the connectivity to all of their on-property systems that deliver reservations to their property management system so that they can continue to operate their business through this transition. Those distribution support staff were on top of it. We helped them put together training curriculums on all of the technology. Sabre, as the primary vendor for that, was deeply involved. And it was just a lot of communication, a lot of hand-holding. Of course, there were definitely bumps along the road and after launch, and still some to this day.
So it's interesting because lessons learned is always interesting to me. And one of the questions that we're asking everybody who sits in our hot seat here is what is a particular pitfall? So everybody's ambitious, and certainly Boomi's telling a very compelling story, and sometimes it gets lost that it's not just the technology that you're using to transform. It's the process, it's the people, it's the culture. What kind of advice would you offer to someone who's in the middle of an implementation or thinking about a major implementation like this, that they might want to double check, try to avoid as they begin?
Let me think about that for a second. There were a lot of areas where things we would have done slightly differently now if we had, now with what we understand. From a technology team perspective, so management of my IT resources, one of the pitfalls we found was, as a small company, we had to rely heavily on our partner. Slalom really helped us through every aspect of this project, all the way to launch and even after launch. But because so much was going on, we didn't insert ourselves into their part of the project as much as we need to. Actually, the very fact that I just referred to it as their part of the project kind of speaks to what the issue I'm referring to. And no matter how good your partner is and how many knowledge transfer sessions you do after the fact, The reality is they're going to walk out the door when the contract is up and they've delivered their product, and you have to still run this very robust, very powerful, but very complex system that is Boomi, or quite frankly, any platform like
Exactly.
that. And we were not prepared for that as much as we thought we were. If we were doing this again, or if any of you are going through this now, you really need to, from the beginning, staff your team for the end result.
For that transfer of knowledge and
Absolutely.
responsibility.
And that's a difficult thing, particularly financially, because we were building the team as we went, and we timed it so that we were building the team to take over when it launched, which was what made financial sense,
Sure.
why double the resources. But that was a short-term view, because what ended up happening was our resources weren't up to speed as fast as
You
they
need
needed
a little
to be.
overlap.
Needed a lot more overlap, and we needed to really embed our teams together and have the LHW developers working on the same code base as the partner developers, rather than us having our part of the project and them having their part of the project. Because in the end, it's all our project.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. It's on your and it's an interesting perspective in that there is technology, and there's a lot of amazing technology, and certainly Boomi is some of that. But it doesn't come in a magic box that you just open up and everything happens. There needs to be certainly clear direction from the owner of this solution, but also a clear understanding of how it's going to get implemented, understanding that there needs to be other partner pieces involved, and then that overlap and transition. It's good
Absolutely.
stuff. That's good stuff.
Yeah.
And I think it really is. There are a lot of moving parts in a major transformation, and it sounds like you guys went through really serious business.
Absolutely. And another challenge, and I would lump this as part of the transformation that we found going through this project, was in a smaller company like ours, there's often a lot of turnover in the roles that handle a lot of the technology and the data and the customer interface. I think it's just the nature of a smaller company. And add that to the fact that we had really, let's say, long-lived technology platforms, there wasn't a clear understanding of how the platforms we were replacing actually operated. And in many cases, we didn't learn that until after we went live, and we started seeing different results than we expected. So I'd say another lesson learned is you have to spend probably 2 or 3 times more than you would expect digging into requirements and, quite frankly, questioning the requirements that you are presented if you are not fully confident that the original source of those business rules and those requirements is still part of the organization. And as much as I would like to say it's because of the age of our technology and the age of our company, we're actually very I don't want to say old, but let's say mature company.
Established.
We're about established. I like that. We're going to be 100 years old fairly soon, I think.
That's
We're over
established.
90, yeah. A lot of, I think there's a lot more companies out there that go through those same challenges. And everyone's doing their job the way they were taught to by their predecessor, but they don't necessarily understand why they're doing it that way. And that really surfaces when you're doing a complete transformation.
Well, and I think that's another interesting point, is that there's more than just technology and partners. There's culture that you have to consider, and not necessarily overcome, but drive adoption and adaptation, if they're adaptation to these types of transformative projects. So
Absolutely.
this is a great story. I love it. We could keep going.
I would also like to say, since other people are going to see this, like one of the amazing things of going through this process with leading hotels was it wasn't something that we as project leaders needed to overcome. It was something that we as an organization were able to overcome together. There was no defensiveness in the organization. There was no combativeness about why we had to understand why business processes were. It was something that we realized we're all embarking on together, and everyone worked really well together. And that way, it's really fortunate. And that really enabled the project to go.
And I think that's the ultimate lesson, right? Is that everybody needs to be on the same page, right? So it has to come from the top down, but every level has to be in on the plan and the objectives, and bought in fully into the transformation that's being attempted.
It makes all the difference.
So while I still have you, what's next?
That's another great question. So it's funny, we're actually in our planning cycle. Now that we've been through these massive transformations, we still have kind of a long tail of legacy systems that we're decommissioning and finishing that kind of cleanup.
Yeah.
But now we're really excited about where we are, because we've got a platform that is flexible, that is extendable. We're looking at what is the next set of tools that we need to build for our hoteliers to help them manage their business with us. One of our big objectives is to give them really a 360-degree view of the customer. If you come to one of our hotels in the United States and we learn about you, those insights should be available to the hotel in Paris that you visit under Leading Hotels.
Well, and that's the point of the data, right? I mean, why do all this if you can't take advantage of the data and make it actionable down at the customer level?
Exactly.
And that interaction level.
Exactly. And you expect that as a customer of a global brand like Leading Hotels, that the more you share with us, the more we can improve your experience on property. And now we're finally in a position where we can start building those tools. And they're still quite a ways away because we've just laid the foundation. But it's now not this theory that we talk about but can't fulfill on. We can fulfill on it, and now it's just a matter of kind of resources and time.
Well, and it's consistent with the brand, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
That's the idea of the brand, certainly a well-established brand, but certainly a brand that is, I think of as a customer-centric brand that's really trying to provide a very different experience for a very particular type of customer.
Yep.
Excellent. Thanks for swinging by.
Oh, thank you.
This is we always like these types of events because we do get to run into customers and actually have a nice conversation like this. So we appreciate it very much. Certainly check out the Leading Hotels of the World. A great brand and a great product. And thanks for swinging by, Michael.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
You bet.
Take care.